Okay, today we are actually joined by my brother, Jordan Lounsbury.
Jordan,
applause
welcome.
here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'll insert the applause sound effect. So Jordan's new to this program, and you might find that we sound alike.
Very alike.
So if you can't tell,
Suspiciously alike.
if you can't tell who's who initially on the mic, the more annoying one will probably be Jordan. So
You can also watch the video clip, and Jordan has the way better haircut. So there's
that's
and no facial hair, which
I think that's
is a good route to go.
I have a ponytail right now. Just let everyone who
I
may
did
not be watching.
I did like it that you did something with your hair today, Ben.
Ooh, zing! I like that you actually took some time. Yeah, it's normally just out and about and crazy like. But welcome, Jordan. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today we're drinking, what is it, Aaron?
This is the reverse orangutan. This is probably the
TRO.
second.
They changed their logo. Okay, the reverse orangutan.
It's all coming. It's all coming together. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here today. This is the reverse orangutan, a staple on the show.
And we'll go.
They have the best ice cubes. Big block. Well, they just have the big
cubes.
bricks, big cubes.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know what I've seen before too? Some coffee shops will do ice cubes that are made of coffee, like cold brew.
Oh,
so it doesn't water down the coffee. And it's genius.
It is.
I'm just saying. Just throwing that out there. I don't know. It was that one coffee shop down there.
Well, we're trying to get sponsorships.
Like,
if you have any
Star
I can remember
or something.
Oh, you know, Ben?
Starbucks.
You know this?
Jeez, guys.
Starts with an S.
Star.
I've seen a few of them.
I knew it could not be that one, so I thought it was something else. Anyways,
Well, in
the
closing,
reverse orangutan.
Yeah, we'll get.
In case you're wondering, Ben and Jordan drink the same drink,
Yes,
and that is a latte.
We'll
Have you always
we'll
been a
get into
latte guy, Jordan?
I feel like it's sort of like if you want to judge a coffee shop, that's sort of the standard. You got to you got to start with the latte.
I think I almost heard.
You know what I mean?
That's a carbon copy of something I've heard Ben say. You guys are good from the same block. Anyways,
okay. So
cheers, everybody.
We'll get into the specific review of the coffee at the end.
Oh,
but today, that's how we round third and get home. Because otherwise,
it's the only way to get home.
We'll talk here.
it's the only direction you have.
It's just a hard pivot. Okay, so how's your coffee?
It's like the north. It's like the mountains north. You always know where you are because the coffee's coming around it. Yeah.
So I had a great experience in high school. I realized, okay, how do I, what do you do after high school if you want to jump into ministry? And one of the sort of pathways I took was, okay, maybe I'll go to a Christian college, Christian university, and sort of, immerse myself in that world and prepare myself for ministry and leadership and what it'll be like to be a pastor. So ended up going to Loyola University in La Mirada, California. A pretty reputable conservative Christian school.
And I actually ended up going to Azusa, so we were rivals for a little bit.
Oh, is that right?
I went for a year and a half.
Oh,
and then I left.
I knew you went to. No,
I couldn't hang. No,
I didn't realize they were rivals.
Big rivals. It used to be intense, and then it mellowed out a little bit. I don't even know where it's at right now.
Yeah, but I've lost touch.
Yeah, but yeah, big rivals. So Loyola focuses a lot on sort of biblical teaching, like understanding the Bible. So you have to take every student there graduates with a minor in Bible.
Wow.
So no matter what, that's sort of the requirement, no matter what you study. So anyways, went there. During my career there at college, I studied communication and Christian ministry. So it was a double major. And sort of got involved in residence life, became an RA, really loved that program and sort of picked up that, there's ways to disciple people and be involved in these conversations and talk about, the gospel and how to apply it to life outside of just a pastor role. And I had some incredible mentors there at Loyola, and I was like, I want to do what these people are doing, which was work in residence life. So eventually ended up pursuing that career pathway, which brought me to Wheaton College, who has they have a great student development program in their master's.
Okay, let's shift gears here.
Yeah.
We want to talk about and get kind of your thoughts in the experiences you've had in university, being amongst a diverse community of young adults. We wanted to get on and talk about politics. We have an election coming up next week. It'll be November 3rd. And we wanted to just have a discussion about, one, politics, two, the church, and we wanted to talk about it from a point of diverse perspective, recognizing that even within someone's own family, you could have someone who's firmly, let's say everyone's believers, everyone has faith, and would call themselves Christians, and at the same time might not see things the same way politically or even policy-wise. We wanted to talk about what your thoughts would be behind the idea that, say, two people who politically maybe just don't see things the same way. A shallow example, let's just go far right, far left, right? We have extremes on both sides. But both call themselves Christians and follow the faith and can agree on one thing or some things in the truths of Scripture, and at the same time potentially see things so differently in terms of the manifestation of those values. What are some things you've seen that could shed some light on those dynamics?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I think when I started my experience, in Christian higher ed, if you will, it's sort of, I always knew there was sort of there were people on both sides, right? I was at very conservative institutions. They're very different, but they're both really conservative. So I always knew there were progressive students, and then there were always conservative students, and that these, they butted heads on issues. I think when I first started, I think my assumption was that they're just sort of different ways to practice it, and that we can have like really civil, cordial conversations about it, and really be okay with sort of walking in the same direction and, still working together, right? Like we're not all going to agree on the same issues. And that's why these conversations are essential. And I still believe that. And I still think that's really critical for the church, and for society really in general, right?
Which the church should probably be leading the way in, or at least setting the model for how those conversations should happen, right?
Absolutely.
As Christians, yeah.
Like, well, and even considering, is the church the example, or do they have even a really effective, compelling model? And so one of the things I noticed was in 2015 or 2016, right before the election, we were like everybody else as sort of administrators and leaders of the university, sort of looking at this situation, being like, okay, how do we prepare our student body, who largely they're coming out of really conservative homes, very generally, they're in sort of adoption mode of their parents' views, which largely conservative. So they're going to see this loss of a Trump candidacy as, and Hillary Clinton winning this election as devastating to them. Like, this is going to be really difficult. So how do we prep our students for this and really think about what does it look like to continue to be Christ-centered, gospel-centered students in a world, where this candidate, Hillary Clinton, was not considered, a conservative favorite, to say the least. And then the election happens, and sort of, I think the whole institution is sort of thrown for a loop. We lose our grounding, and we're like, whoa. Lose our grounding, meaning like we were kind of confused on what to do. because it took us by surprise. And so starting from that moment on, I think I've thought a lot and sort of really observed within students that this has become more of, this is my own opinion. I'm not the authoritative source on this, but
that we want to be clear about that. We're just sharing, different perspectives.
And this is a good opportunity to also, I'm glad you said that, Jordan, to interject. None of us here, Ben, myself, or Jordan, we would all sign off on what Jordan just said. None of us are authoritative. The reason this podcast exists is to start a conversation that hopefully continues or inspires you to have a conversation. And this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but you can email us. Like, we want you guys as the listeners to understand that you have a seat at this table. And so these conversations are meant to open doors within the church, to have conversations with those in the church, those without of the church. Maybe they go to a different church. We want to have these conversations. And so as you're listening and as we get into and go down places that maybe make you feel uncomfortable, they might even make us feel uncomfortable. I don't know. That's why we have coffee and comfortable chairs. Comfortable chairs and uncomfortable conversations. Maybe that's, anyways.
Maybe that's the title.
Yeah. I think, I like that, Jordan.
Yeah.
Although the chairs, we could do a better job on the chairs as well. We want to open the door. So as we have these things, and as you're listening, if something really fires you up, or maybe you feel really compelled in a positive way to add to the conversation, that is why we have an email address. That's why I have an Instagram. That's why there's lots of ways that you can connect with us to add to this conversation. So
yeah, and we want to include those voices.
Of
so
course,
this is about like perspectives and upbringings and experiences that we may never have experienced or learned ourselves, and so you can contribute to that. And so we'd love to take those into consideration and even bring up future episodes where we can dive into some of these things a little deeper and introduce new ideas or questions and get to those.
So Jordan, continue.
Yeah. Unless you want to shout out the email. I don't know.
The email is in a very special link in the show notes of this episode and every episode. All you have to do is click the link and you will see everything that you've ever needed to know in regards to connecting and sharing your opinion.
We just figured you'd be followed by the Spirit and know what to just send an email somewhere.
Send it somewhere, it'll get back to us.
If you refuse to click the link, you can send it to Ben. If you refuse to click the link, you can send it to media@oneandall.church. And I would be happy to have a conversation with you. Anyways, Jordan, please continue. Excellent.
Love it. So I think mainly what I saw when that happened was that and this actually probably applied
when you saw the Trump winning in 2016 over Hillary, right? And what it did to the students. Okay.
Correct. And what it did really more to the staff and faculty there.
Wow.
And how the students were sort of observing us. Essentially, I didn't see it as a conversation. Well, I didn't see it as as much of a conversation on the actual topics and philosophies anymore. I saw it more as like a culture war. So being like really polarized, that's the nature, right? It's us versus them. I think we would all agree America in general is in a very polarized state, right? Yeah. So it's really difficult to sort of find the common ground or be exposed to a difference and say, oh, that's a really interesting idea. Like I can sympathize or empathize with that. I don't know if it's the best way, but like definitely a valid point. I saw it more as a culture war in the sense of we need to sort of regain influence and regain power, and this candidate is going to do it for us.
It makes me wonder, the church houses both of these sides and these people. And you were talking about the experience of the students being on campus for the 2016 election. I can't imagine. And I'd be curious to hear kind of the temperature of what this is going to be in the 2020 election, both from the students' perspective as well as kind of what they're looking to the faculty to kind of learn and understand. How do we interact with this? But how do we start to reconcile these two sides that live under the same roof? And for some of us, it literally is under our roof, our family. We're in the same family, but we have different experiences in life. Some of us have lived in Chicago and some of us have just stayed in Southern California. And we have these different perspectives and experiences. But you made a point at the very beginning of this, which I think is really important. How do we actually do this? And how do we actually create the model if it doesn't exist? Or maybe it does exist, it's just we can't see it, or it's not on a large scale. So I'd be curious, what would be some of those action steps that we can start taking to like take the conversation that we're having in this room and make that at scale so that more people are having this conversation and doing it well and listening, and so that we can continue living under the same roof. We don't have to buy two different houses and never see each other again.
Yeah, right.
That's a big thing, but I think that's the important thing. Like that's the whole reason we're having this conversation, right? Unity.
Yeah. And I think that's essential. You know, it's interesting. You had mentioned it's never been easier to share information and communicate, but it's never been harder to listen. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that, I think that is one of the keys where we don't listen to understand, we listen to sort of rebut, right? Like we listen to respond. Mm-hmm. We don't really listen to sort of empathize.
Right. And you're a communications major, so you have all of these terms that
I think about this all the time.
He walked in with his ribbon. He had to take off his ribbon and his pin. He put it on the desk.
Yeah, my awards.
Said, "I'm really humble."
Yeah.
And
it's importance for communication.
I studied communication.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I always tell my students when just facilitating dialogue, I'm not even getting to a point, I'm just facilitating this sort of dialogue. My two things are, hey, like one, let's do our best to sort of empathize with other people's experiences. So empathy is I think really critical to these conversations. And why empathy is because it helps us understand what people's different life experiences are and how that's impacted the way they view the world. Mm-hmm. And by direct result, vote and, whatever. The other one is to practice self-reflection. So the idea that you didn't just grow up with all the right ideas and perspectives and views on life and you're good to go and you need to go out and tell everyone those right views. Like, how do you actually reflect on how you were shaped and formed, where you came from, our history in general, right? Like, how did the American church come to be? We didn't just get here, or we just didn't pop up one day, right? Like, there's a history, and that history is really significant and essential to how we move forward. Yeah. So there's a great saying, I forget who the quote belongs to, but it's past is prologue, right? And that has always been a profound sort of like
that's really good
idea on how to reflect and move forward. In terms of practical ideas, right? Like that's the $1 million question. And it is so complex, and I will give everyone that. And it's so difficult. Yeah. That is going to take a long time to sort of work through all this, but we need to do it together. Yeah. Like, we cannot keep playing this game because it's not just not going to work out well for everyone. It's going to sort of disintegrate us as a body, as a church, as communities, etc. So we do have to sort of do this together and hope for a better future. Mm-hmm. And there's three things that I don't want to take credit for these because I'm not trying to plagiarize here in this podcast, but in John Fea's book, he talks about three things that he's seen in evangelical politics, which is power, nostalgia, and fear. Those are some of the three main drivers to evangelical policy and politics. And he'll go into explanations for that, but he sort of proposes, what if we replaced power for humility? What if we replaced nostalgia with history? And then what if we replaced fear with hope? How do we actually make these our aims and these the fruit of evangelicals and politics? And that's what we're known by, right? And we think about, Jesus' statements, and he says to his disciples, and like, they will know you by your love for each other.